What makes a news source trustworthy? For 137 years, the Financial Times has answered that question with fearless reporting, expertise in global affairs, and editorial independence. FT journalists deliver the analysis and insights that shape boardroom decisions and policy debates alike. So when the world feels complex, turn to a source that's built its name on courage and trust. Read more and subscribe at ft.com.
Hello and welcome to Monocle on Culture. I'm Robert Bound. On today's show, we're reflecting on Art Basel in, at this time of year, Basel itself. Now in its 55th year, the art fair remains the world's biggest and brightest. Taking place, though, during tumultuous times and a continued downturn for the art market, it was more important than ever for Art Basel to put on a good show for the gallerists, visitors and Basel's own art aficionados, taking a turn around the Messeplatz last week. On today's show, we'll be enjoying producer Sophie's reporting from the fair, including some of the key figures from Art Basel's leadership team, gallerists reflecting on their sales, curators and artists at the fair and beyond. So do stay tuned. That's all coming up on Monocle on Culture. Now, every year, one of the most striking Art Basel commissions is the one that takes over the Messeplatz itself. It's outside, large-scale and impossible to avoid. This year, German artist Katharina Gross was given the square and decided to cover it with one of her trademark spray paint artworks. Huge magenta and white swirls that make their way across the space, moving up buildings and decorating nearby lampposts. Here's Katharina on the scale of the piece.
So the scale was really a challenge, but also the different points of view that you have on the work. So you can see it from up of the tower, from the parking lot. You can move into it from all the different sides, and that's exactly what I find interesting, that a painting has so many different perspectives. There's no one right point of view. And the other challenge, of course, was and is, and I find that extremely interesting, that it's the most important art fair of the world, and people from all over the world come here with different trajectories and sensitivities and plans and aims and goals, and they have to, once they step onto it, they get a little bit shifted in their attention, and that is something that I was working for.
I've been coming in and out of the two halls here, and I've seen people walking over it, taking pictures with it, someone lying down and kind of doing an angel shape on top of it. How for you does it feel like it changes or comes alive when people start interacting with it?
Yeah, I think the people are really involved. They're part of it. They're changing the aesthetic perception of it by being in it. But at the same time, you also experience, and that was very interesting for myself, all these different eyes on the work. So where you're standing, you look at it, but back there are people looking at it, and everybody is talking about it in different ways. So there is not a just one-to-one relationship. There is the painting, and here's me having a dialogue with it all by myself, but you share that experience, and you create by your activity on it a spatial vibe.
And the piece is called Choir. Why did you name it Choir?
Yeah, so Natalia Grabowska, the curator of the piece, and I were thinking about the title for a long time, and we thought that choir was a really good word to talk about the different voices that come together, the different contradictory voices that are unscripted, coinciding not only by the people, the visitors or the citizens, but also by the different structures, the different features of the Messeplatz.
This is the first time that it has been a painting. How does it feel to be the first painter here, and also how does it change the space with painting rather than the kinds of things that have been done before?
Yeah, that was really exciting to come here as a painter, because it's also very much in the center of my outdoor practice to make a painting part of our everyday life. How could that happen? Because we have so many image devices, but very rarely it is a painting that pops up. What is so amazing that you walk through the fair and there's something so utterly present because of the magenta that is a very brilliant, very visible color, a color that calls for attention and heightens your attention, and yet there is nothing there. There's no object, there's no sculpture, there's no feature that you have to kind of surround or something like that.
It's a work of such magnitude and obviously takes so much planning, but could you talk a little bit about how you get to this stage? You know, what has come before? How much does it change from your original plans? What does that process look like?
Well, the process, of course, comes from a practice that has been going on for many years. So I started smaller, I had different tools, but now I've come to a possibility where I make a model. It was August last year that we got the commission. We went through a couple of stages of planning, of conceptualizing what we wanted to do, and we decided to strip it all down to the utmost necessary. So even the flag poles don't have flags anymore, you know, there's no signage on the square, so we can really go with 2 colors and everything that's there and make an interspersed imagery that is really complex. And so I built that model 1:50 scale, and from there I had a map, a rough sketch that the whole team knew. So they had an image of what I was intending. But then painting in the square, I did all the painting myself, but I had a crew of like 10 people that was behind me working on the machines, supplying all the support I needed for about 5-6 days. And we were very concentratedly working the whole day on finding out, for me as well, how to move, how to paint, and how to invent it. Because the model is only a very rough sketch, but actually inventing the painting for this situation is different than making realizing or copying a sketch. You have to respond to all the different light situations, to the different surfaces, to also you respond to something you've already painted yesterday, and you understand, oh, now I have to move differently than I anticipated, and that is very, very exciting.
You painted over 6 days. It will be here for 7 days, and then it will disappear, and this place will look very different again. And I wonder how you think about that sort of ephemerality of the work.
Yeah, I think within the context of the fair, that is about buying something, owning something, to intersperse a painting that is so transient, that is against the logic of that kind of very business-like setting of a fair. So you can't buy it, you can't own it, you can't keep it. I find that interesting. And only for 7 days is so beautiful. You almost have only the memory to work with. And I think that is a very interesting picture that everybody can take with.
Katharina Gross there. Now, one of the sectors that's become most beloved at Art Basel in its hometown is parkour, the public sector of the fair, which installs artworks throughout the city in unexpected venues. Think shopping centres, underpasses and churches. And this year, it was curated for the second time by Stephanie Hesler. Here she is on the theme of parkour this year, second nature.
For this year, I chose the topic of second nature for parkour. And it's great because I'm giving carte blanche, curatorially speaking, with the theme from Art Basel. And so I thought about the theme and its multiple layers, one of which being the ways that humans are changing nature to the extent that the boundaries between artificiality and nature, or what is considered natural, are becoming ever more obsolete and blurry. And then the second part of that is also the way that gestures and movements and habits, rituals, etc. form our behavior and change our behavior to the extent that when we've changed, we don't even consider those things anymore, or we don't notice them anymore. So our movements, our gestures, our ways of being become second nature to ourselves. And then the third layer are information flows and the circulation of images, of algorithms, of information, and the way that they change the way that we are and change our very nature. And so for parkour, I invited artists with projects specifically addressing these various layers and strands of second nature. And I also, doing it now for the second year, have all of these venues in mind where I think that an artist project would be really fantastic and really beneficial. I'm interested in the conversation between the artist and the site, and many of the artists that I've invited also work site responsively.
These are mostly non-art spaces. Which was the most challenging non-art space to put art into, or the most unusual?
They each have their own. I would say that the underpass where we're showing the Sturtevant video was perhaps the most unusual space, but I was really happy that we were able to make it work. It's a 21-meter long projection of Sturtevant's legendary running dog. It's an image that repeats every 9 seconds and sort of loops endlessly. And Sturtevant was really interested in, or she was known for copying other artists' works and recreating other artists' works. In the later part of her life, she became interested in the internet and in the images and the streams of information that are proliferating endlessly online. And so this running dog is really one of the iconic works by Sturtevant. And I wanted parkour this year to feel more intergenerational as well. So her work was really key to my concept and to the curatorial thinking around the selection of artists. And I proposed to the gallery and the estate to have this projection in the underpass right by the river, where people are passing with their dogs and, you know, going on their walks and so on. And it's a really great intervention in public space. And that was probably the most challenging one for this iteration of parkour.
Art Basel is obviously a commercial art event, and one of the things that makes parkour so special is that it is dotted around the city and it is really for the public, as well as, you know, people who are coming here to buy art or to look at art at Art Basel. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the importance of having that alongside everything else that's happening at Art Basel.
Yeah, parkour is the public sector of Art Basel, and it takes place in the city. It's free and open to all. It opens on Monday before the rest of the fair starts, and it's really an invitation to visitors who are in town for the fair, as well as local audiences. I think it's a great opportunity for different visitors to meet and for people to encounter art in their day-to-day life without going to a museum or attending the show itself. There's a really beautiful dialogue between the international art world and the local audiences in Basel as well. And I love when art in public space, like at parkour, interjects in people's everyday life, and when there's these moments of surprise and encounter when you're going about your day-to-day. So people who are passing Klarastraße and who are going from the Rhine toward the fairgrounds have the opportunity to discover all of these works in spaces where they don't usually expect them. The Selma Selman installation in the church, for example, people encounter if they're attending church, or the Thomas Bayerle installation in the Manor department store. People encounter that installation while they go about their shopping. Agnieszka Kurant's installation in the UBS window addresses the bank and addresses actually circulation of money and of value, and it is cited in the UBS branch at Klaraplatz. So people who go to the bank to do their everyday, business are able to encounter that work there. So parkour is really a great moment where all of these different things come together, and I feel an important part of Art Basel, and has been for so long. And we moved it closer to the fairgrounds now for the second consecutive year, which also brings more attention to this part of the city. Klarastraße is where a lot of shops are, there's a lot of commerce, and it's not as picturesque as some other parts of the city where maybe tourists go more often. So it also brings attention to the everyday life of Basel, which I find really inspiring, and which the artists that I've worked with also find really inspiring.
Curator of Parkour, Stephanie Hesler there. Now let's head away from Art Basel for a moment, as the fair is always timed with some truly exceptional museum shows. At the Museum Tinguely, French-Swiss artist Julien Charrière has a new show which ponders the relationship between people and the earth, specifically as a world of water. Often in near total darkness, visitors are invited to take a different perspective, whether that's through lying down to watch films beamed onto the ceiling or by exploring parts of the ocean we'd never normally explore. Sophie spoke to the director of the museum and the curator of the show, Roland Petit, to find out more.
he takes you by the hand and dives together with you down to more than 1,000 meters below sea level, with different works, video installations, photos, sculptures. The topic is the deep sea. That's why the title Midnight Zone, and this title refers to one specific work that he created in the last 2 years, and it's a dive with a light tower lantern down to 1,000 meters. We know more about the moon and Mars than we know about the deep sea. It's really something completely unknown. There hasn't been that much research. It's completely inaccessible, but it's a very essential part of our ecological system. So if you count in that there are 3 dimensions, more than 95% of our ecosystem is below the sea. That zone is between 1,000 and 3,000 meters below sea level, and it's the largest ecosystem of the world. And it's in that zone, or even deeper, where actually there are initiatives that start up for deep sea mining to collect rare earth and rare metals. And if this would start up more than it is now it's not yet done that much, this could be incredible disaster for nature, and that's for sure one thing that he wants to address. And this exhibition is not so much it's beautiful for the eye, but it's even more important to know that the deep sea, there is no sight, you cannot use your eyes, but it's a world of sound. I could make a comparison with the work of Jean Tinguely, as in his practice you're embraced with your senses. There's something to see, something to hear, something to activate your body. And it's through this identification, I would say, that it works as well with Julien Charrière. So to dive is to kind of be united with water, and water, that's where we come from as individuals and also as mankind. And I think it's this approach which is important also, to be able, if you just problematize things, maybe you're not heard. But I think if you show the beauty of the nature and show that we are not in opposition to nature, but we are part of it, I think that enables you to go further, or to involve people in thinking further and get an own opinion on what is going on in our world.
Museum Tinguely's Roland Petit there, and Julien Charrière's Midnight Zone is on at the museum until the 2nd of November. Now, there's been plenty of chatter in recent months, and maybe even the last couple of years, about the continued downturn of the global art market. Less frenzied purchasing, a wider range of prices, and talk of a buyer's market. To cut through some of that talk, we spoke to the well-known dealer Thaddeus Ropak from his eponymous gallery. So what does he think? Well, first up, he told us what kind of things the gallery brought to this year's booth.
We try, of course, to show a variety of our program, to show different artists which we work with, represent, and it's a mix of historical works. We showed a very important painting by Robert Rauschenberg, which came from the estate, up to a very new work by the Austrian painter Martha Jungwirth, who is in her 80s. We showed the historical work by Elisabeth Peyton and brought a very new work by George Baselitz, which came directly from the studio. And then we're showing a very important Oskar Schlemmer from 1952. It's a variety.
And we're speaking on Thursday. We've had the preview days. And how have sales been? How, everyone is talking about this kind of downward trend, but how have you found it?
From our preview, we felt there was a lot of attention and people were really reaching out and collectors announcing their visit. And so we felt there was a good feeling to come here. But we were surprised how well it went after all. I think it was much stronger than anticipated. We are very pleased, yeah. And it's like important to say that, of course, some of the American collectors are missing here, who have been coming less to Basel and preferring to come in October to Paris, Art Basel Paris, which became a bit of a competition to this fair. But I think Europe came out in full, and you could really feel how many great European collectors there are who can support the success of such a fair.
Just finally, it's an exciting year for your gallery as you're opening an outpost in Milan. Why is now the right time for Milan for you?
This was more a personal decision, and I have to say, when we took this decision, which was of course already a couple of years ago, starting a project like this is not something you do within a couple of months. There was not yet the excitement of all these non-doms moving to Milan, which is kind of a plus, but this was not the reason we went there. Italy was always missing a bit in our gallery universe, so I was always drawn to Italy. We have done many projects with our artists, during all these Venice biennials, and so it is not new to us. Our artists love Italy. It was more to go to a place which inspires our artists, and I think this is what Milan is.
The gallerist Thaddeus Ropak there. And finally, on today's show, a word from the Chief Artistic Officer and Global Director of Art Basel Fairs, who's Vincenzo Di Bellis. This year marked the very first Art Basel Awards, a new programme to recognise individuals and organisations shaping the future of contemporary art. Here's Vincenzo on what unites those 36 medalists.
First of all, it is very important for us that this is not just about the strict art world, but it's also about the world of art, which is probably it's a nomenclature difference, but actually makes a lot of sense. So this is, we firmly believe that the art world is getting bigger and is getting more inclusive of practitioners from other adjacent industries. Therefore, we were very enthusiastic when we started to think about what to do with the awards, really to involve all these different categories. What unites them is the fact that we believe that all these people, all these individuals, organizations, not only are defining what art is today, but will help us understand what art will be in the future. So the award is not just about celebrating what they've done, but also responsibility to what they will have to do, and they will have to show us what that is.
You mentioned there the reasons that some of these people have these awards. Could you pick out maybe a couple of the medalists? There's big recognizable names in there. There's also people, many might not have heard of them before. Can you pick out a couple that you're particularly excited to be celebrating?
Yes. I'll pick three if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I'll start with the icons, the artists, because we have three categories for artists. One of them is the icons. And those are the ones that are legacy artists that are already marking their legacy and have been seen and looked up by a younger generation of artists. I can mention Cecilia Vicuña. I think it's just a great example. Is an artist that has been late recognized into her practice at a global stage. But many artists from the more recent generations are looking at our work and being really inspired by our work. The same would be in the same category for John Jonas, who's been a force of performing art, of art using performance. And now we see how much of that is now present in our museums or galleries around the globe. Other examples of non-artists are Grace Wells Bonner, who is a phenomenal fashion designer, and I think it's more than that. She's an artist. And so our way of dressing our bodies really has the same impact that a painter does on the canvas, and shapes the personality of people as much as Grace, as much as an artist shapes the personality of someone through a portrait. then I probably should mention someone like Maya Hoffman or Joel Wax, two very different patrons of the art. One that started as a city council, Joel Wax, very incredibly active in politics, and then through that activism got engaged with art, and now with his work at the helm of the World Foundation has supported dozens of thousands of projects in the United States and across the globe. And then, of course, Maya Hoffman, who is a private collector, who then eventually created a phenomenal center of gravitas of her own world and the work that she supports with the Luma Foundation, first in Zurich and now in Zurich and Ireland. So those are just few, I've said more than three, few examples of why these people deserve our support, celebration, and why they are so important for the industry.
And there'll all be people that you are honouring at your ceremony, but I wonder how you think about these awards as more than just a moment and a badge, and how it's, you know, a greater and longer, more in-depth programme than that.
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that we're going to celebrate this 36 organization and individuals. But then the journey, this is just the beginning of the journey, because those individuals and organization and the individuals who are behind the organization will have to vote on each other. So there's a sense of responsibility for them to choose the gold awards. So that is the difference, that is one of the biggest difference of these awards versus many others. But also, in my vision, also will help the longevity of this project, because it's really about getting recognized from your own peers. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's any better way to really feel the impact of your work than the one that it's given to you by your peers.
Vincenzo Di Bellister. And that is all for this week. 1,000 thanks to Sophie Monaghan-Coombs for her excellent reports from Art Basel last week. Monocle on Culture is produced by Sophie and Steph Chungu, and Steph also edits the show. A special thanks to Hunter Wang for his editing help this week as well. We'll be back at the same time next week, but until then, from me, Robert Bound, thanks for tuning in.
What does culture say about the way we live and how we could live better? Join Monocle in Barcelona this September for our annual Quality of Life conference. From bold new voices in media, design and the arts to lively debates on diplomacy, design and urbanism, it's 3 days of fresh thinking and creative exchange. Find out more and book your seat at monocle.com/conference.